I have considerable experience with education in the Philippines, having been directly involved in the schooling of 10 children in the Philippines, mostly in private but also government schools. I'm making this video for any parent that is considering educating their child in the Philippines. There is a common belief among some that at a primary level, the education system in the Philippines is preferable to Australia. I'm going to provide 7 reasons why I think it's preferable to have your child educated in Australia. There are, of course, always exceptions. 1. Teaching the basics. This is based on the fallacy that in the Philippines, it's better because they focus more on the basics, what the older generations used to call the 3 R's. The education system in the Philippines is a rote-based learning system. This means constant drilling and repetition. And Filipinos develop great memorization skills. At an early stage, this approach works well, learning the times table, for example. But the learning by rote approach does not teach conceptual understanding and does not develop good problem solving and critical thinking skills. As a foreigner, I know such criticism will be resented by many Filipinos. In response, I'll just point to Jose Rizal, who wrote a scathing criticism of the Philippine educational system over 100 years ago, which is still as valid today as when he wrote it. Number 2, values and respect. Another reason some advocate an early education in the Philippines over Australia is the belief that the children are taught values and respect and that they are subject to less bad influences. While children in the Philippines may seem to be more respectful and obedient, this is actually a poor excuse for preferring the Philippines education over an Australian. Because what you're actually saying is that you're delegating the responsibility for imparting morals and values to the educational system. At home, too many children are left to themselves. They're given all the toys and electric child-minding gadgets they desire, but they're not given the time and guidance of their parents. They are not given enough love and care. Another problem is that parents do not monitor what their children are being taught in schools. The big takeaway here is that teaching morals and respect is the parents' responsibility. Number 3, facilities and resources. In my experience, the best private schools in the Philippines only match the standard of public schools in Australia. I'm talking about the quality and maintenance of the buildings, classrooms, playgrounds, fences, etc. Schools in Australia also have a lot more resources at their disposal. Number 4, too much focus on extracurricular activity. The amount of time that many schools in the Philippines dedicate to extracurricular activities is excessive. One such activity I observed a number of times is United Nations Day, where children are encouraged to dress up in a traditional costume of another nationality. On the surface, this seems like a great idea. Learn about other people and cultures. But in my experience, very little actual learning about other people and cultures goes on. It's all about dressing up and parading around with lots of rehearsals. Throughout the year, there are many ongoing such activities that seem to occupy way too much school time. Number 5, religious schools. Sending your child to a religious school is generally a personal choice. In the Philippines, many, if not most, of the private schools tend to be religious. So if you want your child to be in one of the better private schools, then chances are it will be a religious school. So you need to be prepared that your child might be subject to a lot more religious instruction than you might feel comfortable with. Personally, I do not see this as a bad thing, as long as there is a good balance between the religious component in the classroom. Of course, talking about a good balance is very subjective. It is my opinion that many schools allocate an excessive amount of time in the classroom to religious matters. I believe the majority of religious schools in Australia achieve a much better balance. Number 6, bullying and discrimination. This is a much bigger one than most people would suspect. I believe the reason behind this is pride and jealousy or resentment of foreigners that many Filipinos have hiding behind smiles. While living on the island in the south of the Philippines, I was forced to send my son to one of the public schools. He was one of the very few mixed-race children in the school. He was constantly picked on and generally excluded by the other students. This bullying and discrimination is not limited to public schools. At one time, I had children attending the Royal Oaks International School in Cebu. At this school, the teachers actively participated in denigrating the foreign students. It would be not an overstatement to say the environment was hostile. The next year, I transferred the children to the Bright Academy in Cebu. I have only praise for that school. If you are in Cebu with a mixed-race child, this is a school where you should send your children. As I said at the start, there are always exceptions. Conclusion? I've been back in Australia now for a year with my Filipino-born children. After 1 year at school here, there is no doubt in my mind that children are better off at school here than in the Philippines. So I'll finish by saying, get your children to Australia as soon as possible. If you have Filipino-born children or adopting children, then talk to Jeff at Down Under Visa. He arranged the citizenship by descent for my children.